Hey everyone, my name is Ish. I lead social and community here at A16Z Crypto, and I'm going to give you all a crash course on how to build a social presence. By the way, if you've ever seen a like or a retweet come through, that'd be me just creeping through the feed. I pretty much live my life on social media, as you'll see throughout this presentation. All right, so usually when I talk to founders, the top Winnie the Pooh is what I get back. We were talking about social media marketing. I'm bringing up the fact that they should be active online. And they're usually unamused. Unamused, but they know it's very important for the company. And by the end of the conversation, and hopefully by the end of this conversation, we get them to be very excited at like the bottom Winnie the Pooh. Because social platforms are the way that you're gonna establish brand, establish growth, and establish trust within your communities. So hopefully we can get you to that bottom Winnie the Pooh by the end of this presentation. And just a quick snapshot of how I've gotten to A16Z Crypto. Funny enough, when I first started working here, I was asked to do like a very short, 5-minute presentation at our all hands, and I had to talk about what I did before working here. And I never realized that I only worked at social media companies, usually in social media roles. So I started off my career at LinkedIn. I was there for about 5 years. I led social media for their biggest business line, which is a $2 billion business. Then went over to work at Snap on global partnerships, and then led marketing and growth at a social media startup, a seed stage startup. So that's why I know these little growth hacks and how to get user acquisition, stuff like that. So safe to say I'm extremely addicted to social media, but it's part of my job, so I kind of tell myself that it's okay, it's worth it. Awesome. Before we jump in, one quick poll, or actually 3 questions. So if you're the person that's posting on social media for your startup, raise your hand. Okay, about half of the room. If you raise your hand if you feel like you don't have time to be posting on social because you have other priorities. Okay, thank you for the honesty. And last but not least, raise your hand if you want to be posting, but you don't know what type of content to be posting. Cool, about a third of the room. Awesome. Hopefully we can answer those 3 questions and get you guys to a good place by the end of this. So over the next couple of minutes, I'm going to go ahead and share everything that I've learned over the past 10 years. It'll be pretty tough. It's going to feel like a fire hose of information, but again, this is being recorded so you can rewatch it later. And feel free to take photos or take notes. So, in my experience growing social platforms, there's 3 ways to really grow an audience on social. There's one, you can be famous, which is pretty difficult to do. I like to see myself as Michael Scott in that meme right there, just trying to grow an audience among celebrities and influencers that just have established brands and established audiences and make it just so easy for them. Number 2, you could be controversial, which works in the short term, but I wouldn't recommend doing just because it's not a very good long-term strategy. It could tarnish your brand over time. And number 3, my favorite, which is the most sustainable, is being helpful. And being helpful is kind of a broad term here. I kind of break it down in 3 different aspects. The first is you can inform people, inform your audience with a particular topic that you're a niche and expert in, or whatever it is that you're building. You can inspire people. You all are founders here. You can inspire them by your stories and the things that you're learning. And number 3, you can entertain people by just showing them, the entire process of being a founder, or if you find something funny, or if you're really, good at memes, throwing that into your content strategy. So in general, just trying to help people have a better experience by following you instead of other people online. So there's 3 questions that you're going to want to get started before you develop your content strategy. The first, and the very simple questions, is what do you want to achieve? Do you want to grow an audience? Do you want to grow your following? Do you want to increase brand sentiment? Maybe you want to generate downloads or user acquisition because you have an upcoming launch. Number 2, why is this important to you? Are you going to be doing another round of fundraising? Maybe you have a product launch coming up, and so you want to generate user acquisition or pre-signups before you go ahead and launch a product. And last but not least, when would you want to complete this by? Time boxing things is going to make it way easier than just saying we want to 10x our audience sometime, or we want to gain 10,000 followers by end of the year. Like, okay, that's nice. Everybody wants to 10x, but if you can time box it to say we want to grow our following by 100 this month, and then 200 next month, and while we're doing that, we want to generate 50 people to sign up for our wait list, and those are metrics that you can actually work towards. So again, put a date on everything. Next, you're going to want to identify your target audience, and this is usually what it feels like when you're getting started. It's really, really crazy, chaotic. You don't know if you're going for users of your product, other founders in the space, crypto degens, etc. But luckily, I have a good framework for how to identify your target audience. And some of this Amanda talked about a bit, so it should be fresh. 7 questions to identify your target audience. You can see that I really like these types of themes, right? Very clear to understand. So the first is, what types of accounts are you targeting? Are there other founders in the space? Are there other businesses in the space, other brands in the space, influencers in the space, potential users, etc.? Number 2, where in the world are they located? This one is really difficult for crypto and Web3 because there's so many people that are anonymous. But the more information and data you can get around where people are from is going to help you in terms of when you're going to be posting, and maybe the types of posts you're going to be posting, and maybe even the topics. Number 3, and actually just backtracking to number 2 really quick, if you're really having a hard time finding out where they're located, you can use like analytic tools, like Twitter should be able to tell you where you're getting the engagement from, or like a growth hacky way to do it is like straight up go into your Discord or wherever you have your community and just say like drop your flags below, where is everybody from? And being able to get a good hunch of like, okay, well 50% of our audience is in the UK. Well, maybe we shouldn't be posting on US times because they're not seeing it, they're all asleep. So 3, what other accounts do they follow online? What are the big influencers that they follow, the content creators that they follow? This is going to help you when you're like staring at a blank screen trying to figure out what it is to tweet or what it is to post. So who do they follow? What type of content do they engage with? Number 4, probably one of the most important ones, is what social platforms do they use most? You're not going to be wanting to use Instagram if all they're using is Twitter. Very simple. Number 5, what are their favorite topics to engage with? One way to kind of figure this out is going back to look at what are the accounts that other people follow, the big creators in the space, and then going through their content to see what's their top performing content. Go through their last 50 posts and then try to organize them in terms of like what did really well with them and bucket them into themes so that you can use these themes for yourself. Number 6, how do they use social media? Everybody uses social media differently. Even everybody in this room uses it differently. For some people, social media, like Twitter, Instagram, etc., is a tool to just decompress, to kind of just like mindlessly scroll. For other people, like myself, use social media to connect with people. For others, they use it as a learning platform. Their Twitter is only content that they want to just learn from. And so really understanding your target audience and how they use the social platforms that you want to be on is going to help shape what you're going to be posting. Number 7, your value proposition. So why the heck should people follow you? Like, why is your account going to be different than every other account of a founder that's building in the space? What are you going to be able to give to people by lending them your time? Next, super important here. You're going to want to select 2 social platforms if you're getting started. You are all founders here, and you juggle 10 different things at once: building a product, managing a team, all of these other crazy things. Being active on more than 2 social platforms is just not like sustainable. It's overwhelming. So whether you have like a head of marketing or you have somebody that's kind of owning your channels, if you're trying to develop them for your own channels as a founder, then you shouldn't be active on 3, 4, 5, or 6 platforms. Get started with 2, and the goal is to build the muscle of creating high quality content over time, and then scale out to a 3rd one, or hire somebody to help you create content and manage those platforms. Remember, focus here. Okay, so you've identified your target audience, you're posting regularly on social media, maybe you're getting some feedback from your community. Next, you want to measure what the heck does success look like. And so let's break it down. There's 2 ways to measure success for social. There's a qualitative way, which, to be honest, a lot of people overlook this. It's like the fluffy stuff that it's really tough to measure. And then the quantitative, which is the stuff that everybody wants to measure: the following, the growth, the engagement, all the numbers. So my suggestion to you all would be like, I know you're all founders, you're extremely driven, you're going to look at the quantitative metrics, but spend more time on the qualitative. So feedback, replies, questions. Try to look at themes of the recurring inbound messages that you're receiving, your DMs, etc. All this stuff tells you how people feel about your brand. And here's some examples. So my team knows that I'm notorious for just always sending them stuff in terms of mentions that we get online, because building a brand is everybody's job. It's not just your job as a founder. It's not just the head of marketer's job. And so if you're seeing this qualitative feedback online, A simple way just to get the message across to everybody on the team is to copy it, send it in Slack, send it in Discord, and say, hey, look, we got a message from so-and-so. I've noticed we keep getting this type of message from our community. Must be a good sign that we're doing something well. Again, I'm looking for the words that people are using: positive, negative, neutral, and on a long-term basis, on a month, 2 month, 3 months, 6 months, even a year, is it trending up? Is it trending down? Are we getting more negative mentions, or are we getting more positive mentions? And then the quantitative feedback. So the numbers. This is what everybody wants here. And kind of like the waterfall approach that I like to tell people is you're going to want to increase your engagement, which increases your impressions, your total reach, which waterfalls into profile visits, which waterfalls into followers. So engagement is always going to be the #1 metric that you're going to want to strive for, and it'll help drive traffic back to your accounts, which if you can convert them, turns into followers. And another way to measure if your content is doing well, is using in-app analytics. Don't need to get super crazy fancy. You don't need to use these crazy tools. I mean, Sprout Social and those tools are really good for scheduling. But I would say at this stage, just using the in-app analytics, Twitter analytics, Instagram analytics, LinkedIn analytics, is just going to be like a perfect way to get started. Kind of like a little tip that I would do here. If you're on Twitter, go to your analytics. You can reverse chronological order by best performing post and bottom performing post. And then what I would do is try to find themes. Okay, for the past 60 days or 30 days, what are the top 5 performing posts? Are there any themes that we're seeing with these? Wow, we've noticed that all of our memes do really well, or all of our memes do bad. Or every time we include a blog link, it does mediocre. Or every time we talk about this particular topic or post on this particular day or this particular time, it does well. And so you're going to want to jot these things down so you can kind of scale them and make them into a framework and a processes. What to track? These are things that I personally track on a weekly basis, on a daily basis sometimes, is engagement. Your likes, your comments, your shares, replies. You don't need to get like super granular and get down to the exact number, but just overall how you're trending over time. If your content is doing well, then the engagement should be going up over time. Reach, the total number of times your content has been seen. This is the way that you're going to grow your accounts, by getting into more audiences, more circles of people, increasing your reach. And conversions. So for those of you who have launched a product already, this is how much traffic are you driving from social over to your landing page, or to your Substack, or to your podcast, or wherever you want to capture that audience, and how is social playing a role there. Followers, I know we've talked about that, and everybody likes to talk about that, but like more than anything, track what content is driving spikes in your following. So I was talking to somebody today, and they said that a post drove 2,000 followers yesterday. The post that they did yesterday, and I think it was the spaces that they did. And so that's a telling sign. If you can do that on a regular basis, maybe not daily, but maybe weekly or monthly, then you can rely on that to drive consistent growth for your social channels. And then last but not least, actually this is probably my favorite one, is your top and bottom performing posts, which I just talked about. Try to deconstruct what made something good versus what made something bad. Takes a little bit of creativity, but I'm sure you guys could do it. Awesome. So now let's talk about content strategy, which is going to be the life and the blood of your entire growth strategy. 4 questions, and Amanda talked about this as well. 4 questions you're going to want to answer, and your entire team should be able to answer these in order to shape your content strategy. The first, what product are you building? Like, be very intricate with your answer, very detailed. Number 2, who is your product for? Number 3, how can people use your product? And number 4, what problem or problems does your product solve? The reason why you want to write these down and include them in your content strategy is because you're going to be repeatedly answering them on a weekly basis. It's not just good enough to have them on your landing page or on your email or some inbound message when people in your Discord. You have to be repeatedly answering this on your social platforms, because you can't expect people just to automatically know what it is that what does you do or why you exist. And so you can get creative with like Twitter Spaces, Threads, maybe short form videos, podcasts, and pick a topic, pick one of these that you want to go really deep on. Next, I want to talk about content formatting. And here's 4 examples that I think did a really awesome job. First is Bello. I think they did a really good job with the video announcement that they had. Stand out in the feed, short, succinct, And as you could tell, it drove really, really awesome engagement. Next is Shield with their recent announcement. I think the thread was just beautifully written. I love the imagery as well. Stands out in the feed too. You're scrolling through Twitter a mile a minute. It really does stand out. I think Formless does a really good job of humanizing the brand over on Instagram and using Reels. I don't think very many, Web3 or crypto platforms or tools would be using Instagram, but it really does work for them. And then last but not least, I think David has done a really good job throughout the entire program of just sharing like the founder perspective. I'm at Crypto Startup School. Here's what I'm learning. Here's who I'm meeting. All that stuff is really awesome. So the TLDR here is create content for the platform that you're actually posting on. Don't just like create it once and cross-pollinate it across every platform. Little tweaks here and there with the formatting, with the spacing, using tabs on Twitter so it stands out better, it looks better. If you're on LinkedIn, maybe using a long-form post, but making it so that, I think it's the third tab, makes people click. So if you have a really long-form post, make sure that third line is eye-grabbing, because you want people to click, read more, and then read the entire thing. So just understanding how these social platforms are formatted is going to help you when you're trying to stand out. Awesome. Okay, one of the biggest questions that I get from founders is like, I know I should be doing this, I know it's really important, but I don't really know like what to post or how to post or the types of content that I can do on a regular basis. And so I have these themes that everybody here can use on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis. And what I would do if I were you all is pick one day a week for each of these. So maybe Mondays, you're going to do a product update every single Monday, small product update. Here's something we shipped, something we worked on, something that we're working on. Maybe every Wednesday, you do like a community question. Write down a list of the top 10 questions that you think your community is going to engage with, and hopefully the responses add value to everybody else that's going to that question, so that it's not just like a shilly question to get engagement. And then maybe Fridays, you're doing like a founder reflection. Here's what I learned this week, here's what I did this week, here's what I shipped this week, here's what I'm doing this weekend, etc. And so when you think about these on a long-term scale, you can repeatedly do them out, like crank them out. You can knock out like 20 community questions in 1 hour when you sit down with your co-founders. Founder reflections, you can do that every week because you're just reflecting on what you did or what you're planning to do. So the goal here is to try to create like systems and frameworks so you're not stuck at the blank screen trying to figure out what it is you're going to post, which is really scary to do. Next is content cadence. This meme really really brings to life how I feel about people when they are creating content and it's not really doing so hot. So they think that the answer is create more content. Like the Thread Boys thing on Twitter, crypto Twitter, it's a thing. People just pumping out content, they're like, oh, it's not really doing well, 0 likes, 1 like. So the idea is like, oh, let's just do 10 more threads. And then it doesn't really do well. And so I'm going to talk about my framework for content cadence. Start with quality, measured with your in-app analytics. Next, consistency. Next, quantity. So again, quality as measured by your analytics, impressions, comments, retweets, bookmarks. Consistency, okay, you got 1 post per week. Can we get to 2 per week? Can we get to 1 per day? And then if the metrics are staying consistent or staying, maybe even increasing, then you can increase your content quality over time or quantity over time. Again, trying to build that muscle of creating content. You shouldn't just expect yourselves to be able to do it straight off the gate. Like you're really trying to build a muscle. And again, you're using in-app analytics to measure the quality, measure the performance, impressions, engagements. Did a post drive new followers? Being able to measure that as well. Luckily, Twitter shows that, which is awesome. Next is community management. So I oftentimes feel like Oprah right here when I'm jumping into the A16Z crypto Twitter. You get a like, you get a retweet, you get a reply, everybody gets engagement. But all jokes aside, community management is like a huge part of my personal growth strategy for any social platform that I manage. If you're posting content and it's doing well, but you're not actually replying to the people that are commenting, then you're leaving so much on the table. Because every time you reply, it helps bubble up that content to the top of the feed. And then maybe they reply again, or somebody else in their network sees it, they reply, and then it bubbles it again. So you're tapping into new audiences every single time, not just getting like a 1 chance at getting the post be seen. And you don't have to overcomplicate this at all. You don't need any fancy tools. It literally just means every single morning while you're having your coffee, 15 minutes, 10 minutes, going into the platforms and engaging with people who are replying to you or replying to people's questions, trying to be helpful in any way that you can. One thing that I like to tell people about community management is like, this is how you build super fans. So if anybody here has ever gotten a reply from like one of your favorite celebrities or maybe like a musician or an athlete, like you actually comment on their Instagram post or LinkedIn post or Twitter post or whatever, and they actually reply to you, like how magical that moment is, you feel like so special. I know it's happened to me. And then that point moving forward, like how you feel so much more attached to them, so much more loyal to them, you're trying to do the same thing with your brands. Make people feel seen, make them feel heard. Really does go a long way. I know it's kind of like touchy-feely, but it does go a long way. And here are some examples of community management. Again, I do this every single day, trying to get back to as many replies as possible. Sometimes it's overwhelming, but it's worth it because it works. And again, you don't need to be it doesn't need to be complicated with your replies. I use a lot of emojis just to let people know that, I saw your message, I'm acknowledging it, here's a reply. But sometimes there's ways where you can, take it one step further and be super helpful. So I think there's one of these examples where somebody was asking if the session was going to be recorded or asking for a particular podcast, and I took it like, customer service above and beyond. Go find that link and just put it there for them. Don't make them look for it. And then that drives, more loyalty, which in social terms drives in more engagement. I bet you that person moving forward probably sent notifications or liked our next post or engaged with our next post, retweeted our next post. That's how you build super fans. All right, this is the fun part. So building a brand account versus building a founder account. Oftentimes, I'm sure everybody in this room who has both of them has felt like this. Spider-Man, just pointing at each other, because the content is the same, maybe, or it kind of sounds the same, or the voice and tone is all similar. Maybe you're even using the exact same content on both handles, which is kind of a no-no, but we can work around it. So how do you differentiate between your brand account and your personal founder account that you own? Here's one way. So your brand account should be like the company point of view. It should show like the macro progress of how the company is doing, maybe even spotlighting team member or community members. You should have a very consistent voice and tone that anybody who owns that account or manages that account or any new social media manager, community manager, anybody who has access to that account should be on board with what the voice and tone is. If 3 people have access to it and they're all posting content, it should still feel like one voice and tone. For a brand account, you could also share like company updates, like I said, spotlighting community members. And your founder account, similar, but you're sharing your personal founder perspective, your point of view. What are you learning? What are you experiencing? What are you thinking about? You're showcasing your journey as a founder throughout this program and building a company, and you're sharing your personal insights, which can be slightly different than sharing what the company learned. So again, the two can have similar types of content, but it should be differentiated, especially when it comes to the voice and tone. You're not going to want your brand account can have some inspiration from how the founders' personalities, but it shouldn't sound identical to like the founder accounts, because then what's the point of following both of them? And that's what you want. You want people to follow your account, the brand account, so you can capture that audience in 2 places. And an example for a brand account that I think does a good job is Yuga Labs. Great mix of content. They highlight their founders, they do company updates, and they also keep their community informed all the time with what they're doing. I think they do an awesome job with the imagery as well. Feels very consistent. That's what you're looking for, consistency. And as for a founder example, I think Dan from Farcaster does an awesome job of just building in public. And funny enough, he's kind of building a little bit of like a Twitter competitor, yet he's still leveraging Twitter on a daily basis to drive traffic to Farcaster or to let people know about Farcaster. He's like doing an A+ job at building in public, but more than anything, I like that not all of his content is just like Farcaster related. I would say like 10 or 20% of his content is about just like macro thoughts. What does he think about an industry? What are the things that he's learning? What's web3 and crypto related stuff that he's kind of been digging into. I think that is super important when you're trying to build a good founder account, because if all you're talking about is your company and what you're building, then it kind of comes off a little shilly. Whereas if you mix it in with things that you're learning that are maybe tangential related to your product or your company, but not directly related, then it just comes off a lot better, easier to consume. Awesome. So we got most of the tough stuff out. Next is what people usually ask me for, is like, hey, how do I grow? How do I 10x? Like quickly, I need to do this fast. And while there isn't like a guaranteed way to like 10x overnight, there is a simple framework that I've already touched on. So increased engagement, social engagement, is going to increase your reach, which will increase your following, which increases your engagement, and the cycle just repeats. So increased engagement, what does that mean? That means like more likes, more replies, more retweets, which help you reach new audiences. Increased reach, you're reaching more people, and hopefully it works like a funnel. Some of those people click on your account, they find you interesting, and a portion of them hit follow, which then increases your total addressable audience or your total audience on social, and then the cycle repeats. One way to do this is encourage or entice shares and replies. So these are some of our best performing posts for A16Z Crypto. You can take and model this after yourselves or for yourselves. One thing that I'll say is like if you're going to straight up ask questions for your audience with the intent of getting like a crazy engagement, make sure that the replies to that question could potentially add value to everybody else. It's not just like baity content. For example, I don't think this one's up here, but I did one that was I think it was what's your favorite, or tag your favorite founders, and another one that did even better was what's your favorite Web3 tools? And then everybody was just tagging in their favorite Web3 tools that they use. And so like as a builder, if you're going ahead, even if you don't reply to that post, and you went through like the 1,000 replies, you're going to get some value out of that, right? So thinking about questions and reverse engineering them so that the output adds value to everybody who goes ahead and looks through the responses. Another growth hack, very simple but sometimes difficult to do in practice, is cross-platform promo. So in the essence, what you're trying to do is take one audience that you have on one platform and get them to follow you or engage with you on another platform. This could be Discord to Twitter, Twitter to email, email to podcast, podcast to website, website back to Twitter. If you can capture people, let's say you have 1,000 followers on Twitter and you have a huge announcement coming up. You post the announcement and it gets pretty whack engagement, or not very many people see it. Whereas if you have 1,000 followers on Twitter, half of them also subscribe to your newsletter, half of those people also follow you on Instagram or follow your personal LinkedIn, and you make that announcement on all those social platforms at once, now the likelihood of more people seeing that announcement is much higher, because your reach is just a lot bigger than it would be on one social platform. So a couple of tips for gaming the algorithm, if you will. Sometimes it kind of feels like that, but hopefully the tips will make you feel like the image on the right. So avoid links when possible. And the reason why is very simple. I mean, you all are builders here, you might understand. Social platforms want to keep people on their platform. So anytime you include a link and drive people to another platform, like a blog or podcast, they're going to reduce your reach. I think Farcaster is probably the only social platform right now that doesn't do that, and Dan has said it publicly. But most Web2 social platforms are going to reduce your reach. And you can even test this for yourself. Post a meme, and then 2 days later, post a link to your blog. Most of the times, the reach is way lower, which in turn, your engagement is lower, which in turn, less people see it, and it's just like the cycle continues. Like a growth hack around it is using like a screenshot of whatever you're trying to post and including it in the replies or in the comments, or telling people, hey, if you want to check this out, DM us or go to our website, link in bio. So like, growth hacky ways around it from putting the link in your first post. Next, very simple, but engaging in the feed regularly. So you all, not only as users of these platforms, as content creators of these platforms, you're being rated. Yes, you're getting some content engagement from the stuff you're posting, but are you actually using the platforms? Personally, there's a time that I took off of using, I think it was LinkedIn or even Twitter for a while, and I have a sizable audience on both of them. And then I came back and started posting, and my number of impressions and reach was just like 10% of what it was before. And it's because if you're not using the platforms, then why are they going to give you reach back? Format for the platform that you're actually creating for. Number 4, use in-app tools and content formats. So if you're on Twitter, use Giphy. It's already integrated in the tool. If you're on Twitter, use Spaces. If you're on LinkedIn, do polls. Use the tools that are created in the app or in the tool itself, because oftentimes they'll give you an extra boost in reach. And if you kind of reverse engineer it as builders, think about it. Like, there's there's product managers on the other sides of these companies, right? So they want people to use certain features because they have KPIs. And if the feature is front and center in the app or in the tool, then it's easier to use, and you're probably going to get more reach because they're boosting it. Number 5, probably the most practical one, optimize for shares, comments, and bookmarks. So whenever you can make somebody take an action on your piece of content, or Elon just actually announced this the other day, saying that more time spent on tweets equates to more organic reach. So getting people to stop, look at your content, maybe engage with it, maybe share it, bookmark it to save later, is going to help you with your reach. Number 6, drive engagement within the first few minutes. I'm also notorious for doing this on my personal and for company-related stuff. So whenever we post something that's a really big announcement, we'll go ahead and share it to like as many people as possible within the firm or within friends or people that I know who are going to engage with the content. You can do this as well, within the cohort or within your founder friends or with your co-founders. If you post something, share it, have them like it, engage it, retweet it, vice versa. Trying to drive engagement within the first couple of minutes is going to tell the platform, this is a good piece of content. Give it to more people, show it to more people, and then the cycle continues. And last but not least, revive old posts by adding a comment or a retweet. So I've done this a few times. It does pretty well if the content is still relevant later on. So let's say you post something 3 months ago. It was an absolute awesome post. It has crazy engagement. 3 months has passed. Replying to that and saying, what are your thoughts about this? Or does anybody have any questions about this particular topic? Or if it's on Twitter or even LinkedIn, just reposting it, sending it right to the top of your feed. Because the likelihood of every single one of your followers seeing it the first time around is slim to none. So finding ways to get your best performing content to get more reach. Okay. Last section, which I kind of wanted to dedicate an entire slide to, is Twitter growth. I know everybody here is pretty active on Twitter or aspires to be more active. So I have a little bit of a 10-step framework with an example for how to grow on Twitter. Some of this is similar to what we talked about and what Amanda talked about too, but I think it's good to have it all in one place. 1, define your audience. Who are you trying to reach, not on social media, but on Twitter specifically? Crypto Twitter is different than any other social platform that I've seen. It's like an ecosystem within itself. Who are you trying to reach within crypto Twitter? Are they even in crypto Twitter? Or are they just Web2 users you're trying to onboard? 2, define your value proposition on Twitter specifically. And is it different from your other social platforms? Are you going to be known for the person that does daily threads on XYZ topic? Are you going to be known for the person who does, breakdowns of companies that do really well with X particular topic? Being known for something. Number 3, optimize your bio, your photo, and your banner. Again, this sounds very simple, but it goes a long way. Because the way these things work is it's a funnel. If thousands of people are landing on your page every single day, you're trying to convert as many of them as possible to be followers, and you're using social proof, your banner, your image, and your bio. That's like your sales pitch. You don't have very many characters to use, but that's what you're trying to use to convert people. Number 4, add a pinned tweet. Again, this is social proof. What's the topic that you want to be known for? Write a thread about it. Write a long form post about it. Include media, and then pin that to your top of your account. Because if thousands of people are landing on your page, that's the first thing that they're going to see. So you're trying to convince them you're worth a follow, or you would add value to their network. Number 5, set notifications for similar accounts in the space. Other builders, influencers, creators. Maybe pick 5 of them. And once in a while, when they post, try to engage with their content. Yes, you're trying to build relationships, but more than anything, you're trying to increase your own reach. And so one way to do it is to reverse engineer, finding pockets of people that probably would like your content, and finding what other content do they engage with already. There are probably other creators in the space that are already doing it, and getting seen by engaging in the replies, engaging with their content is how you're going to grow. 6, seemingly very simple, but again, sharing content consistently. It's going to help your algorithm rank higher over time because it tells these platforms that you're active on the platform. It tells Twitter that you're active on Twitter. Number 7, community management. So replying to your mentions on a daily basis really does go a long way. Number 8, engaging in the feed on a daily basis. Number 9, a little framework that I like to say to people, especially people who are building something, is give 5 times more than you ask in return. So oftentimes if you're building something that you're very proud of, the gut reaction is you want to say, hey, download this, check this out, look what I built, look what I'm doing, which is fine to do once in a while, but it shouldn't be every single post. Thought leadership here, 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 and then finally you ask for something in return, which is like subscribe or a download or check this out or join our community. And number 10, again, iterate based on feedback and analytics. Is your content doing well? Objectively speaking, look at the numbers, impressions, engagements, replies, bookmarks, usually a good tell too. If your content is really good and it's thought leadership related, the bookmarks will tell you if it's good. And then I think Richard does a really good job at this. Look at one of his top performing posts, which is on the bottom right. We can see how many likes they got. I can't see how many impressions they got, but I'm pretty sure he did really well. He did a thread on securing your NFTs. So was that last year? So I'm willing to bet that that drove a good amount of following to his account because it's something that you can read at any point in time. It is extremely related to what he's building, his niche, his space, and it's pinned to the top of his account. So everybody who lands on his page, whether they're a fan of what he's building at all or not, would probably want to click follow if they're interested in NFTs because that social proof just convinces people. And I also like that he's very active in the feed and engaging with other NFT creators, content creators in the space, not just using Twitter to like blast what he's trying to say. So, final takeaway, this is my super important, very fancy takeaway for you all, is at the end of the day, I just shared a ton of information. You can take, what you see fit, but being helpful and like focusing, niching down 1 or 2 platforms is going to, actually grow your Twitter audience. So you can try to be active on 5 social platforms and be stuck in the middle. You can try to share content all the time, but you're going to burn out. So if you have frameworks that you can use, if you have focus, and you're actually trying to be helpful versus just shilling what you're doing, then over the long term, you'll grow an audience. So that's all that I have for you today. Thank you. Questions?
So I had this question about when it comes to replying to people who are reaching out to you, people who are DMing you, creating tickets in your Discord. So I feel like we've recently gotten a lot of inbound from people who want to be our community manager. I don't know why.
For your Twitter account?
Yeah, Twitter, Discord, a lot of people just kind of coming in and saying oh, we can help you do this for your Discord and all of that stuff. So I'm just wondering how do you think about replying to people that can feel a little bit it starts to feel like spam in a lot of ways and you kind of just want to okay. I don't want to deal with this. Or are there still ways you should think about providing value or fitting those people into a funnel in a way that they can be helpful to your brand?
Yeah. You could develop a community brand ambassador program where it's 10 or 20 people who are extensions of the brand but not employees of the company. Or you can straight up just have a response ready to go for anybody that asks for that open position and say, hey, we're not hiring at the time. We're kind of owning this ourselves, but down the line, we'll keep your information. So I think more than anything, it's just about getting back to people, especially from your company account or your founder account. Because then people go they send you a message and they pour their heart out and you don't get back to them. And it's not a good feeling,
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. But I've seen the community almost ambassador model work pretty well, depending on the audience that you're trying to capture. So that could work. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll look into the ambassadorship.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Hey, Ish, great talk as always. I have a question around audience growth, follower growth, community growth overall, right? So last talk, we talked about how actually community or audience grows in step function. So you have a big announcement, a bunch of followers, right? But here you're kind of talking about continuous growth, right? Just build that over time. So most things we don't have control over, like fundraising or a big client success, fine, whatever, right? But product update is something we have control over. So do you recommend we drop that weekly or bi-weekly, engage the community, or save for a big one? Some people do launch type events at conferences, make a big splash. Which one do you recommend more?
Yeah, I think there's 3 answers to that question. So in terms of the type, when to use the product update, it's kind of depending on where you are with the product stage. So it could be monthly, like every first of the month doing a report or a small thread. It could be bi-weekly, it could be weekly. It kind of depends on where you are. But in terms of like driving spikes of growth, one thing that you can control is like the thought leadership content, which if you kind of, again, reverse engineer it, the name of the game is getting in front of more people. How do you get in front of more people? You get retweets, you get reposts, you get reshares, if that's on Instagram on stories. And so thinking through what content you think your audience is likely to reshare and creating that on a regular basis increases your like at-bats to potentially get a viral piece of content, which then will drive that growth. Like the product update, I think might not drive like the viral growth, but it's good for brand building because it keeps you top of mind and keeps people like, remembering why the heck they're following at the end of the day.
Cool, cool, cool. I have a few ideas. Stay tuned.
Yeah.
Thank you for the fantastic talk. So my question is, how do I find an ish for my startup? More specifically, like what are some high signal questions I can ask a potential interviewee that might reveal their aptitude for social media?
I'm a fan of like project-based work through the interview process, but maybe just not making it related to like your company, because then people feel like they got used for free work. But asking them to do like, here's what we're building, here's our audience, or here's the audience that we think we're trying to target, here's some of the KPIs, and then asking them like, broad strokes, how would you bring this to social? What social platforms would you use? What would be your social media strategy, your content strategy? And then trying to like, sift through the people who are just fake social media managers that have audiences but don't really understand why and how they built them, and then the people that actually know what they're building and how they do social. So project-based work, I think, works really well for social.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey, Ish, I thought the talk was genius, so thank you so much. Given your deep expertise at combating the social media algorithm and your mastery of it, what do you see as the core opportunity for the future of social, and what do you want it to look like going forward?
I'm a fan of, like decentralized protocols and being able to create your own feed, and having options as a user to be able to tap into, I don't really like the way this platform is going. I want to use another one, but I want to keep my audience. And so that's my biggest frustration with Web2, is like I've been on social since I was like, 14. And as social platforms, Vine, MySpace, building audiences and then like losing them is probably my biggest frustration. So I think interoperability and being able to like take one audience somewhere and keep them, not just try to transfer them over or like funnel them into another platform, is probably the most exciting for me.
Yeah, I would agree. Thank you.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much, Ish. That was fantastic.
Yeah, thank you.